Welcome to today's episode for people interested in the extraordinary, yet ancient and often long forgotten stuff. This is your host, Joseph Campbell from homebythebeach.com. Our guest today is Ryan Souther. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Joseph. Thank you for having me.
Well, nice to have you on the show. I'm honored. This will be a really interesting interview. You have such a rich life and so much to learn from you. The topic today is from traumatic events to inner peace and wisdom. Let's go into your biography, Ryan. He has written a book of poetry and a couple of books of haiku, which is a type of short form poetry originally from Japan. He had numerous art exhibitions in the Northwest. Humboldt County, California, has been his place of residency. He has a 10-year-old son with the name of Marley. Ryan is a certified shamanic life coach and art therapist, and he goes by Llama Su on various online platforms. On some of them, he is an administrator. Today's topic, as we said, is from traumatic events to inner peace and wisdom. And like many of us, you began your hero's journey of self-knowledge, searching for an answer outside of yourself. You had a trauma in your youth, which took some 10 years of self-healing. Tell me, Ryan, what was your life like before you turned to wisdom tradition? With that, I mean all traditions of all religions, the whole world.
It was a bit monotonous, a bit, felt like a puppet, kind of controlled by the world. I was patient, basically. I saw many therapists and counselors, and I was on heavy medication. Basically just drowned me. I was swallowed up in a diagnosis and thought basically my life was told to me, kind of created for me. And I was in a very lost place.
And one time you even overdosed.
Yes. Yeah. I was sleep deprived for I don't even know how long I didn't have sleep, but I was in a bad place for sure. That
was in your 20s.
Yes.
And you had I read your bio. It was you were like engaged in conspiracy theories, and I mean your search in the beginning started with what is good and evil, and all these things we ask ourselves in our journey. But then you also became quite engaged in this kind of very polarized topics of the world, and finally, after your overdoses, you needed medical treatment, and then you self-healed for 10 years. How did you self-heal?
Oh, boy. A lot of focus and mindfulness, I'd say. I got myself off medication. I was reevaluated plenty of times, and they told me I was basically cured of the diagnosis they gave. And that kind of brought back a knowledge of self to me, to, that I'm the creator of my own reality. And I knew there was something more to my experience.
Yes, and, yes, it happens to many, this kind of suffering before. It's on the hero's journey, like Joseph Campbell wrote. And so then, interestingly enough, you started an apprenticeship in the temple of the Jedi order in your early 30s. And tell me a little bit more about Jediism. Is a philosophy mainly based on the depiction of the Jedi characters in Star Wars media.
Well, I'm still learning, that's for sure. I've had a couple teaching masters. It's all virtual online. I'm still going through it. I kind of move slow like a turtle, but it's a ever evolving practice, and it's not an end point. It definitely has opened my eyes up to Joseph Campbell, and brought me back to Alan Watts and Carl Jung and Lao Tzu. It's really a belief in something metaphysical beyond space and time. It's a belief in the force. And
yes.
When I looked into Joseph Campbell and what George Lucas got from him,
Right.
it really opened my eyes.
It's modern mythology. And I think it's highly influenced by Joseph Campbell. And that interview...
He did the interview with Bill Moyer, I think.
Bill Moyer, exactly, yeah. Exactly. And that was in the mansion of George Lucas. So
right.
Now we are coming to the interesting topic for me. So you turn to, additionally, because you're still practicing Jediism, it's very highly influenced of Zen Buddhism, actually, the way I see it, the way he deals with the sword and all this master-disciple relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like Zen Buddhism. Anyway, you became very interested in Buddhism, Alan Watts, Joseph Campbell, and Carl Jung. And they were your major influences. They are still your major influences. We know each other from a group about Alan Watts, an online internet Facebook group. And that's how we got to know each other. Yeah. And I appreciate it, and I appreciate your wise comments there, and always very mediating, always very on the side of wisdom, not like going to an extreme in the middle, as I say, So Alan Watts is a great influence for people to unroot them from any structure, I mean, you could be a Jehovah's Witness, you could be, any specific religion, whatever, and maybe it's too narrow, whatever, listening to Alan Watts or reading Alan Watts' books will unroot you. But in my opinion, it's very important also to distance yourself if you are saturated with him, because otherwise it becomes like a totem, you become a totem worshiper, because people, they repeat his verses and his poetry to the maximum, and I don't see any more much wisdom from that, except from memory, they imagine they're enlightened and whatever. I don't see the genuine thing in this. Right. But he's very good. He's very good. Sorry?
It's like, well, most people get caught up in, attached to being kind of a follower of the person and not really the idea, or they get caught up in the idea and they lose, they get stuck in that box where they're kind of they trap themselves in. So
that is so true. Yeah, it is his enlightenment, it's not yours, and you have to find your own way, and it is just very interesting. I've seen this many times with people, that they get, not just with Alan Watts, but all kinds of authors, just like with modern gurus. And it happens with ancient sages also. You can always just get trapped into their thought world. It's nice to study it. It's nice to gain wisdom from it. But ultimately, and that's where meditation comes in, and self-awareness. It's about, what is my takeaway from it? Who am I?
Yeah.
And so, but, interesting with Alan Watts, I have studied him a long time. But I distanced myself a little bit. Now I go back again. I have this master's degree in world religions, and I liked certain books there, like Houston Smith, The World's Religions, is a great author and very wise person. He wrote this compassionate book about world religions. There's all religions in there, and it's not like you're going from the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition and opposed. Now you go to the Eastern world of spirituality, and then you look down at the Western traditions and stuff like this. It's like he really sees the good things in everything, just like Joseph Campbell also, right? And but I'm going back rather again to the root, like the life of Lao Tzu, his teaching, the Buddha, and Hinduism, the Upanishads, really like I used to when I was very young already, and then I studied it. And so because we have the same interest in this kind of Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and Alan Watts, that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, it's fascinating to consider the source of knowledge and where all these religions spring from, and it leads to a deeper understanding of oneself. You want to know where we came from, and we want to know what life's all about. And
yeah, I started out very early with reading Lao Tzu. I didn't understand a word. I was in my teenage years, and then the Upanishads I read just before I went to India for 2 years. I was 22, coming back from South America, where I traveled for a year. And there again, I didn't understand much, but I had some spiritual experiences with it. The Upanishads are very deep, very deep scripture. And it made me go to India. And then I studied the world religions because I wanted to clarify more. And that's where all these people come in. Like, we talked about these authors, these poets, entertainers, spiritual entertainers, like Alan Watts, or mythologists, Joseph Campbell, and Carl Jung, a psychologist, where when you study them, you just get more clarifications and you go back again to understand the scriptures, which they also studied, really. It comes out, they all, there are so many philosophers, and Alan Watts and Joseph Campbell, of course, and Carl Jung, Schopenhauer. You can go into so many philosophies in the Western world, and you will find out they were studying, these ancient traditions like Confucianism, Taoism, particularly the Upanishads. I don't know since when this book was around. I think 19th century, 18th century. It was already in Europe. I don't know how it came here, but several philosophers studied it. Well, the trio of those authors, Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, Alan Watts, is a fabulous trio to get to the root of good and evil and the like. So what do you find so fascinating studying these great thinkers and influencers, including modern gurus? You like very much, I noticed from our conversations, you like very much a variety of gurus. Krishnamurti, one of them.
I guess the intelligence behind it and what I found to be relative and how they connected was very intriguing. The idea of the shadow. I studied psychology for a few years in high school, and it really kind of opened my mind up to the polarity of the left and right brain and the thinking of the yin yang, and the black and the white, the light and the dark, I started breaking it down.
The Shadow by Carl Jung, The Shadow.
Yeah.
He's very famous for it. And how do you relate this to yourself, this teaching about the shadow by Carl Jung, this polarity? It's interesting. Yin and yang actually means the shadow side and the sunny side of the mountain.
Okay.
So it's our shadow side. It is nothing bad. It's just like not there, always conscious, but it does.
Yeah, I'd say that's part of the myth, that every conscious person goes through, I guess, is going through an experience that is life-changing and quite a challenge, and breaking through to the other side to where, where you can look back and reflect and recognize that nobody's perfect. And I don't know, kind of like an awakening, I guess, to be able to know that there's a new day. It could change anytime, and you don't have to be stuck in that shadow, that there's light on the other side. It would, to me, all these people, they've been inspiring, and even that word inspiring to me, it's like they're a spirit, kind of. There's something inside of them that lights me up. There's magic in that. I think there's something special, there's something mysterious, and I think that's also kind of part of the myth of consciousness, even, that like where does it come from? How does, are we just receivers, or are we transmitting consciousness? It's very fascinating. The more in depth I consider their teachings, and it is like a mindful meditation almost to study them and contemplate, what are they saying exactly? And it's always good to whenever I feel challenged, I usually go back to their teachings, and it kind of, clarifies me up a little bit.
Yes, and you say you get lightened up reading those things about this phenomena.
Yeah.
How would you define enlightenment? I mean, how would you awakening? How would you see it in your daily life? How does it come up?
That's a good question. I'd say it's kind of the awareness in the moment, being present, and realizing just the clouds passing by, just it's kind of satori. I look at it like it's just a moment, and it's brief, and it just happens. And I don't know. It's that's a very good question.
Well, it's we all go through this to some degree. I see it often also as when you are relating with other people, you see through them, and you don't mind, but you see through them. You see sometimes people want to manipulate you, or they want to just give you their negativity in order they can get rid of it, and you get it, and then they feel better, and you see through it. It's like this is not exactly satori, but it has all kind of effects, and it's a process, like everything in our life. It's never a concept.
The ego conditioning is our society really tends to pressure us to have a facade, and be a different person outside in the world than who we are, maybe, when we're alone. And it creates a division, a split within people. And I think being honest and true to yourself, I think that's the toughest practice, I think, for people, is to be honest with themselves and to not lie to themselves. And I feel like that's where healing comes in, and shamanism and stuff like that. It's finding out for yourself. It's a self healing, really. Nobody can do it for you.
You have your own field of reference, and you also your own space-time event. I mean, ultimately,
right.
We grew up in a certain space and in a certain time, and that's why we're all different. Even though I think essentially we're the same, but all these experiences make us different, and that's the roles also we play in life. We have many roles, and to identify with those roles is very something unenlightened. I mean, we have so many roles, yet it is like the Hindus say. It's a beautiful metaphor. It is like the relationship between the jivas and Brahman, the self with the small letter S, and the self with the big letter S. You have all these chess figures when you play chess, right? And there's the player, and the player moves the bishop, he moves the horse, he moves the queen, whatever, right? He moves all those players, and the Hindus have this metaphor that you're not basically the figures of the chess game, you are the player. It doesn't matter if you lose or win, the player is always learning from it, and it becomes more skilled in it, and it becomes more, he learns the processes of life, how to deal with it. Yeah, I think it's good to just have a more distant view of it and see your roles in life as something you learn from, and you can use them. And there's nothing wrong with playing your roles, because, as we know both from Hinduism, life is a cosmic play. It's a cosmic game. It's
Indra's net, like you say, the net,
that is actually more, that's Lord Indra's net is actually used in Hinduism and Buddhism. It's more like a description, a simile, a metaphor of the reality we are living in. Everything is reflecting everything else. It's like one jewel, like one big jewel, and that one big jewel is consists of trillions of jewels, which is you and me, and we all reflect the whole thing. It's this fourth Dharma world where you say that it's all interdependently co-originating and mutually penetrating this world. So, like chaos theory, right? A butterfly dies in China and the whole cosmos is somehow affected by it.
Yeah.
No, but that's just an extreme example. What are some other modern gurus which you like to study and listen? Krishnamurti.
Don Miguel Ruiz. Mm-hmm. I like him a lot. As a modern writer, he's written The Four Agreements. Dr. David Hawkins, I like him. He's kind of different. I like Ram Dass, and I like Wayne Dyer.
You like all of them, actually, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's hard for me not. Aldous Huxley was an early inspiration. Krishnamurti, though, for me lately has been he's kind of like the Yoda of Star Wars. He always gets me thinking and really centering myself back into the moment, and that's a wisdom that I don't even. It's hard to even comprehend how eloquent he is when he speaks, and it's just so on.
I like Nisargadatta, also know him. Maharaj Nisargadatta.
I don't
he's
know.
from that meditation, like it's like the I am philosophy, which is huge in India. I mean, there are basically, I think, 5 or 6 major types of meditation. 2 of them are Hindu. One of them is that I am meditation, the self-inquiry. That's where he comes from, and a lot of others. Actually, Ellen was they're all about this I am thing. I am, the real I. And then there's the mantra meditation. Then it goes to the Buddhist meditations like the Vipassana, Metta, and Zazen and mindfulness, right? These are the major ones because the Judeo-Christian Islamic traditions, they have more contemplation. It's more contemplating scripture. Anyway, I think Ram Dass is a fantastic story. I really like to listen. One time, see a YouTube video and listen to his life. Fantastic. I mean, really, it's extraordinary. His life is extraordinary. And I was also 2 years in India, so I could identify with it. But he started out as this Harvard professor, right? And then they tried first time this LSD, and then he sits on a sofa, and suddenly he looks from above to the sofa, and he sees only the sofa, but he's gone, right? This is incredible. That's right?
Amazing. Yeah. Forerunner psychedelic experience.
Yeah. But the major story I love the most is when he comes back from India. And he went several times to India, and he was always taking a lot of this LSD, same like Ellen Watts, and others. And he comes back, and he really, the conception of God in India and the conception of the God in the Judeo-Christian tradition is almost incomparable. You cannot compare it, because when you talk about God in India, Hinduism, Brahman is just it's a different cosmology. It's a different mythology, right? Anyway, from that point of view, he came back to our culture, and he literally, that's what he said, for a while, he was teaching, he was actually giving lectures, and he was weirdly dressed also. He was convinced he was God. He was God. And then the funny thing is this, he got sick of it because, then suddenly he had another lecture, he sits down at the podium and he talks very casually with the people, very humble. And he explains that what happened to him. And he says it was just too much for him. Everything he said had to be premeditated, because he was God. It was so funny. Particularly because he was so honest afterwards, and he explained all things. Now he talks about the soul. No, he's dead now, but has been talking about the soul. like a Christian concept, actually, which we would say, is the self, that unity with Brahman, the self, and God. That is, you can understand it, but
It's
you can understand that unity. You can understand that you're coming from this. You could identify with it, and that you're still not you're never that God, which we think, in the Western world. Forget about it, because even that God for many is devotional, like in India, bhakti yoga. When you love Jesus like God, and all this is just the same, like in India in many ways. However, it is also a very different tradition. When you're from the Old Testament, there's this angry God, and who knows where that one comes from. But we know that the whole thing also starts out with a mythology, and that's what the nice thing is with Joseph Campbell, the Garden of Eden, and that's where already T.T. Suzuki, a Zen master, teaching in America, said, in his opening speech, he said, "Funny culture you have, because he read the story of Garden of Eden. He said, funny culture you have, God is against man, man is against God, woman is against man, man is against woman." Man is against nature, it's like everything is against, And he, from a Buddhist, Shintoist tradition, Confucianist, Taoist tradition, actually, over there is all coming together. This is strange for them, because they see everything interconnected. They see the nothingness is not there is not there as a reality. It's a side of a coin. Nothingness is nothing to be feared, because it always comes with somethingness. It's like, and when you yourself feel so connected with everything, and you could go out and say, "I'm the king of the universe," and that's basically, everybody can say that, because we are probably a trillion ways the universe sees itself. At the other perspective, you are also nothing without everything. You're nothing without your parents. You're nothing without the trees, the sun, the mountains. You're nothing.
Right.
Anyway.
There's no reality without the illusion, and it's like Ram Dass said, look at everybody you see as God in drag, and I think a lot of people, we confuse the small self with the higher self, and we mix that up, and people take it for granted.
That's a part of identification with what you identify, right? There is no, the Maya, the delusion, also illusion in a sense. Illusion is the good thing, right? It's nice to have an illusion. That's why we watch a movie, That's why, we like it so much, when things happen to us in life, and they're not always real, but we love it anyway, But then there's the delusion. The delusion, they can get you a little bit to despair, but it's ultimately, it's within reality, and there is no enlightenment without it. And so there is no enlightenment per se, because it always depends, for me at least, as I interpret it that way, connected with delusion. And the Hindus have this metaphor. If you see, like in the forest, and you see a stick there, a long stick, right? And that would be the reality, right? But when you see it as a snake, and you say it's a snake, there's a snake, that's a delusion, or that's the illusion, whatever, right? And then you realize that's the awakening, that's the enlightenment. It's a branch of a tree, right? So it's like, it's a duality. I think the duality never goes away. I mean, it doesn't matter. People get so polarized about this duality, but emptiness, shunyata, it contains all of these polarities. I don't have to go far out there to become polarized. But if I stay in the middle, then it's a beautiful place to be, in the middle of the polarities. And even good and evil, everything becomes like, Ramakrishna, the mystery of evil. Ramakrishna was one of the main sages in India. And what he says is, I'm quoting, "You may ask, how then can we arrive at any explanation of naturally caused misery, human viciousness, pervasive unhappiness? The answer is that these forms of suffering, which one sincerely struggles to overcome, are experienced by individual awareness, but not by the very principle of awareness, which remains ever free, ever blissful." And now comes the thing, He says, there's venom, a poison, so to speak, right? Venom. No, not you can venom. I don't know how you say it, but venom is a Latin word, right? Venom. In the snake, there's venom in the snake that may cause others to die, or which may be used as a healing medicine. But this substance is neither poison nor medicine to the snake. So that's from Ramakrishna Philip Novak in The World's Wisdom, page 41.
Yeah, when it comes to the idea of like no self, kind of, and kind of being not the witness, but just the witnessing of you're not attached to what is happening. You're there with it, kind of like how Ram Dass had his experience, but you're also not there. and it's kind of like watching a movie or reading a story. You're the narrator, and you're also the main character.
Yeah, what you touch is basically also from, like in the Mundaka Upanishad. I have this readily available because it's on my website. I like to gather the best quotes I ever find there, on by the beach, and that's from the Mundaka Upanishad. And this is called Two Sweet Friends, Individual Soul and Universal Spirit, and that's from Hinduism, the Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishads. And it's a very short quote also. And it says, there are two birds, two sweet friends, who dwell on the self-same tree. The one eats the fruits thereof, and the other looks on in silence. The first is the human soul who, resting on that tree, though active, feels sad in his unwisdom. But on beholding the power and glory of the higher spirit, Atman, he becomes free from sorrow. But that was exactly, it's about that topic you just mentioned. We are observing ourselves and we are there, but that's the two birds, and like metaphorically, not speaking, right? And that's what Ram Dass Paul experienced, one of those birds, the first time when he took LSD, and he looks down at the sofa, and suddenly he is gone.
Mm-hmm.
I think the sofa is also gone afterwards. That's what he said. And he says it so fun, in such a funny way,
It's amazing,
just like
how philosophies, they correlate with science and physics and matter, and that's one thing that Alan Watts always, he talked about Maya and matter and how it correlates. And
yes,
the Dalai Lama, I think the Dalai Lama says something about how science is catching up to Buddhism.
That's what I observe also, yeah.
Yeah.
Metta from the root is from the Latin root. I know it now from Alan Watts and also from Houston Smith. And both have a little bit different view on this, but it's the same in a sense also. Just Alan Watts says metta is actually comes from the root word Maya. Magic too. And if you look at Maya, when we see everything around us so physical and real, and then modern physics tells us, this is all empty stuff. This is quantum physics, whatever, it's all energy just, right? But that's very close to this, right? And then Houston Smith says that the word mother comes also from metta, from Maya. Maya and mother is related. So, we go to Joseph Campbell, Mother Goddess, or the Tao Te Ching, everything comes from the void, and then out of nothing, the void, from the mother comes the 10,000 things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, again, mother and not father. Whereas here in our culture, it's all about father. It's all about the patriarch, the patriarchal system, And it's a weird story, the whole thing here. But Joseph Campbell has a nice interpretation always, and I like it because I can befriend myself with this mythology of the Garden of Eden. Yeah, which is a weird one, if you ask me. If you ask me, that. Some
God. So it kind of reminds me of the Ouroboros and time, and how the snake is eating its own tail.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he doesn't even know he's eating his own tail, and he just keeps going on and on and on. And it's almost like the shadow side of us that is unaware or ignorant or aren't paying attention. And there's always going to be something. Nobody can focus on everything 100% of the time, or like Alan Watts said, it'd be like a piano keys crashing all at once. Total chaos. And I think that's where a lot of trauma comes in for people, going out of insanity kind of, I think that's it gets too much for a lot of people. They take a lot of stuff in and they don't let it out.
It has also to do with our linguistic department. Our linguistic department is part of us, and who we really are, it cannot be described by a word, because the word is something we learn from society. It's a speech, it's a language. And it's wonderful that we have it, really. And of course, because now we can communicate with it, and we can also work on our blind spots, because even if you're talking to me, you're talking and you realize things about yourself, right? And the same with me talking to you. At the same time, when people just consume all kinds of philosophies and even Western tradition, and their language is just a map of the territory. It is not the territory. It's not. And then when they get this point, like particularly in Zen Buddhism, right? I mean, Alan Watts has this incredible example one time on his audio, and many people talk about this, when he says, like a sound, right? A sound is not a sound. A sound is just like, that's a sound. It's not the word, right? It's the sound. And so in Zen Buddhism, it's very, very liberating when you get that point to that at that stage. It's not the final stage, of course. And then I think even beyond Zen, you can leave Zen also altogether. I think you don't have to think of Zen the rest of your life only because you're interested in Zen, right? I mean, but the point is that we are fixated and we are caught in a web of thoughts. We are in it, and we believe that the thoughts are us, and we identify with the thoughts without realizing that thoughts are not us. They're just actually coming and going. We use them with an empty mind. They are useful if they help us. They are not useful if they are not for us, if they are against us. Yeah. That is that inner voice, that critique, when you cannot shut that up and turn it into something positive, then you're caught in that net, and you don't realize that you're identifying with thoughts, with words, which has nothing to do with you. In fact, when we grow up as children, that's the first thing, we learn about our name, and, they say to you, Ryan, and you just ignore it. You're very small, very childlike, and then after a year, they say Ryan, they say so often Ryan to you, and suddenly you look at it and say, you point the finger at yourself and you say, Ryan, and you got it. You are Ryan, right? So now you identify with it, right? But at the same time, these people who are getting so caught up in these polarities and those wild thoughts often of philosophers who took a lot of LSD, I mean, honestly, the Alan Watts, even, a lot of whiskey, every day. And I don't know, they are not necessarily the best models for you, They are for a certain stage, they are good for you. Excellent. But, if you continue, you will always find excuses to live an addictive style of life. And same thing with Ram Dass, in the sense, of course, he was not, at the end of his life, he had this heart attack, and then he was, partially paralyzed. But, it's just part of our life. I mean, LSD is certainly a great thing for Westerners to open up to another reality. It's like, that second bird I said, in Hinduism, that second bird which just watches everything and is not eating from the tree and is not living in the world and suffering and sorrow and all this, that comes suddenly, And then you say, wow, that's also me. That's the real me. Wow, So it's everything is good at a certain stage, and then it goes by. Like, as we said, Zen Buddhism also. I mean, it's like an antivirus program for me, Zen. Once you install it and you run it several times and you feel free, you don't have to go back to this anymore necessarily all the time. I like the sand story. I like the sand stories and the koans and all this, but I don't have to be all my life meditating in zazen in a temple in a robe. Same with Tibetan Buddhism. I just don't, or Hinduism or anything. I'm out of this. You also. That's where we have this great friendship also since many years now already. And it's more like like a conversation and not an interview because we know each other so well. And it's nice to just chat, It doesn't have to be.
It's been the most stimulating conversation I've had in months. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. It's very nice.
It reminds me of fractals a little bit. Yes. I don't know if you're,
Yes, yeah.
It's like the thought just keeps on producing itself. And we can get caught up in, and it's a terrible habit that, and Alan Watts puts it like, once you get the message, you hang up the phone. And sometimes, it takes a couple of times that, you get the message, you hang up the phone, you get the message again, and you got to hang up the phone, and we go through these levels and stages. And I feel like I'm on like the fourth stage of my life, I guess. I don't know why I think it maybe because I'm getting close to 40, but it's an involvement, it's like the flower blooming outside, they come and they go, and it's a fascinating experience, to witness the seasons change, and it's magical. Yeah. It's, even though, it is what it is, and
yes,
it happened,
Yeah, you're a poet of haiku. Haiku is a Japanese kind of poetry. And can you tell me more about haiku? And then I would like to know about your art. That would be perfect.
All right. Well, haiku. Well, it's the syllables of 5, 7, and 5, as far as I know. Basically three lines. First line is 5 syllables, and then second line is 7, and then the third line is 5 again. Basho. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yes.
I like him a whole lot. I don't know. I will think of a quote or something along the lines of a name or something like that, and I like numerology, and so I listen to the sounds of things, and how they approach my ear and how it relates to maybe the feeling at the time that I'm having. And sometimes it'll take me months maybe to complete a haiku. I think I probably still have some that are incomplete. I started and I've moved on, and they're kind of like a Zen, they're brief, but they also can weigh a lot. They
have a point which is not easy to get, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Kind of like a koan.
Kind of like a koan. You have one handy? One you wrote?
All right. Well, this is a silly one.
That's good. Just an example.
All right. So it goes, I tend to keep time as a keyboard typewriter, never leaving space. That's something I wrote the other day.
I got the point, actually. Nice.
Yeah, it's all one, I guess, like the keyboard, the computer doesn't have any room for error. It all just works together, and gears and a clock, kind of. And
it's relative. As they say, in Tibetan Buddhism, absolute relativism.
Right.
It's like time. If you think about time, it's absolute relative. The past and the present is relative absolutely to the moment, to the now. Right. And you can say, the relativity you see when you see it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or a day or a week, the time, it always relates to the now. And space is the same. And I think that poetry has that kind of sense in it. The relativity of space, and you relate it to time, the relativity of time. And how about your art? What is it about? Unfortunately, we cannot see it, but
I use a lot of different mediums. The past couple years, I've gotten more into using recycled materials and natural found objects to kind of make like 3D sculpture kind of things, I guess. I don't know how to put it. But I'm all over. I get old toys, junk toys, that kids don't play with anymore, and I'll try to repurpose them and create my own kind of character out of it. But I am all over. I do photography, watercolor, mixed collage. I do a lot of cutouts of things and put pieces together like a puzzle, and keeps my brain active.
Cool. Ryan, I think we come to a conclusion of the episode. It is has a good time to bring it to a conclusion. I really thank you very much. And if you agree, then I will just wrap it up. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, thank you for your time.
We can talk some more afterwards. But I think the interview has a nice content. And so if you agree, I will now wrap it up.
All right.
So thank you, Ryan, for having been on the show. It was a real pleasure and learning experience. And thank you, listeners, for listening in.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm honored. Thank you.
Well, I'm also very happy that I finally met you now in person on Zoom for the interview. We know each other for a long time. I think 3 years. At least I noticed you already that long. And then we are longtime friends on Facebook. The recap of the show with bullet points are in the show notes with all the links mentioned during the interview on ownbythebeach.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to have you here again for our next episode. This is your host, Joseph Shinwald. Thank you and goodbye until we meet again.